In the heart of New York in the 1850s, a palace of iron and glass rose to be immortalized, photographed by dozens. Yet now, almost every image, every memory in silver and light is missing. 2 prints without a verifiable past are all that remain, despite studios crowding Bryant Park and reports of over 30 plates once preserved. How could the most photographed building of its era vanish, not just from the skyline, but from history's lens entirely? The answer hides in missing archives, vanished prints, and a silence no fire alone can explain. In the summer of 1853, the New York Crystal Palace opened its doors on the edge of what would become Bryant Park, a marvel of iron and glass rising above the city's dust and brick. Designed by Georg Carstensen and Charles Gildemeister, its latticework dome and transparent walls were more than architectural bravado. They were an open invitation to the age of photography. In that moment, New York was not just a city of commerce, but a city of images. Daguerreotype studios lined 6th Avenue and clustered around the park, their signs promising portraits, landscapes, and views of the modern world. The Crystal Palace became their muse. Studio directories from the mid-1850s list over a dozen commercial photographers within walking distance of the exhibition grounds. Names like Gurney, Fredericks, and Brady appeared in advertisements, offering the latest in silvered plates and glass negatives. The new building, with its shimmering surfaces and geometric clarity, drew them in. Press releases for the exhibition of the industry of all nations boasted of photographic commissions and special access for camera operators. The palace itself even hosted displays of photographic technology, lenses, chemicals, and sample plates, positioning itself as both subject and stage for the era's most cutting-edge craft. Photography was not yet 2 decades old, but its popularity was surging. By 1854, New York's daguerreotype parlors were producing thousands of images each year, and the city's newspapers regularly reported on new inventions, faster exposures, and the growing hunger for visual records. The Crystal Palace, with its reflective skin and soaring arches, seemed built for the lens. Visitors posed on its steps, exhibitors requested souvenir portraits, and camera operators worked from dawn until dusk, capturing the building in every season and light. Thousands. The building's iron ribs and glass panes caught the sun, throwing patterns across the lawns and making every photograph an experiment in light. Photographers debated the best angles and exposure times, trading tips in studio journals and exhibition catalogues. Some even mounted their cameras on the rooftops of nearby hotels, hoping to capture the full sweep of the dome against the city skyline. The result was a documented presence rare for its time. Dozens of plates, some commissioned officially, others sold as souvenirs or displayed in shop windows. Experiment. For 5 years, the Crystal Palace stood as both symbol and spectacle, a monument meant to be remembered, not just in memory, but in silver and glass. Every detail, from the delicate ironwork to the banners fluttering above the entrance, was preserved by anonymous hands behind the camera. The expectation was clear. This building, more than any other, would be immortalized in photographs. Its image would outlast the structure itself. Immortalized. Yet, as the years passed and the palace's fate darkened, the very abundance of its photographic record would become a puzzle of its own, a promise made in light and lost in the shadows of history. Puzzle. 2 images claim to be the last witnesses to the Crystal Palace. Both are prints, not original photographs, and neither has a clear path back to the day of the fire. One sits in the vaults of the Metropolitan Museum of Art, catalogued as accession number 63.550.31, a hand-coloured lithograph published by Currier and Ives. The other, nearly identical in composition, is held in the Henry Ford Museum, object ID 89.0.332.163. Each shows the building engulfed in flames, the dome collapsing, crowds frozen in alarm. Both are based on sketches made after the event, shaped by memory and artistic license, not by the lens. No verifiable daguerreotype or glass negative of the fire exists in any public archive. The Metropolitan Museum of Art's print entered the collection through a dealer, with its earliest provenance tracing only as far back as the 20th century. The Henry Ford Museum's copy arrived as part of a larger lot of 19th century prints, with no documentation linking it to a specific photographer or eyewitness. Curatorial notes for both institutions stress that these are not photographs, but lithographs, reproductions created for mass sale. Their details drawn from press reports and the recollections of artists who may never have set foot inside the palace. Institutional catalogues from the New York Historical Society, the Library of Congress, and the Metropolitan Museum of Art list Crystal Palace holdings, but all reference engravings, not original photographic plates. Where accession records mention daguerreotypes or glass negatives, the trail ends with notations like missing since 1902 or destroyed by mildew. In some cases, secondary sources cite plate numbers that have no match in any surviving inventory. The supposed abundance of images has collapsed into a handful of prints, each separated from the event by layers of reproduction, retelling, and loss. Curators and archivists have combed through ledgers and catalogues, searching for evidence of a surviving original. The result is always the same. The only images available for public viewing are these two prints, both labelled as artistic impressions, not direct records. Even the chain of custody for these artifacts is incomplete. No studio stamp, no photographer's mark, no glass plate, only a print, a catalogue number, and a note that what survives is not what was promised. The Crystal Palace was supposed to be the most photographed building of its time. Instead, its final moments are preserved only in art, not in light. The prints endure as stand-ins for lost evidence, reminders of a vanished archive, and a history that can be glimpsed but never fully recovered. Inside the vaults and reading rooms of New York's oldest institutions, the Crystal Palace lingers as a string of numbers and vanished entries. The New York Historical Society, the Library of Congress, and the Metropolitan Museum of Art all maintain ledgers from the late 19th and early 20th centuries, thick with accession numbers, catalogue notations, and brief cryptic remarks. Entries include Crystal Palace North Elevation, 1854, Dome at Dusk, 1855, Main Entrance, Spring, 1856. But beside dozens of these entries, the trail ends abruptly. Margins are crowded with stamps and notes, missing since 1902, destroyed by mildew, removed from collection. Vanished a single page from the New York Historical Society's 1898 ledger lists 7 Crystal Palace daguerreotypes by number, each followed by a blank column for location. 6 are annotated in a registrar's hand, not found at inventory. The Library of Congress Prints Division in a 1917 inventory records 4 plates attributed to the palace, but the next year's update, 1918, declares them unaccounted for. At the Metropolitan, a 1924 transfer list shows 3 negatives with matching titles, all crossed out and marked deaccessioned. Missing insurance files from 1858, requested after the fire, add to the confusion. Letters from the American Institute's Council ask for photographic proof of the building's exhibits and layout. The reply from Robert Lennox Stewart, then the archive custodian, states that all photographic records have been sent to storage for safety. No address or storage receipt is given. 2 years later, Stewart's successor records in the institutional registry that all daguerreotypes and blueprints were destroyed by mildew. The date, 1860, appears beside a list of object numbers, but there are no details of disposal, no witness signature, no inventory of loss. Archive letters discovered in 1931 complicate the picture further. Multiple correspondences between former staff reference a private box of plates held for study, with instructions to keep these materials separate from the main collection. The phrase recurs across at least 3 different letters, each from a different hand, but no subsequent record of the box or its contents appears in any official catalogue or transfer log. The plates are never listed as accessioned, destroyed, or transferred, only as held for study, a phrase that lingers without resolution. Box. Overlaying the surviving ledgers, a pattern emerges. Dozens of orphaned numbers, each representing a plate once believed to exist, now with no trace but a line in a ledger, and a note of absence. Some entries are struck through in red ink, others are left untouched, as if waiting for a future discovery. The catalogue void is not a single event, but a slow, cumulative loss, a photographic record unspooling into silence over decades. What remains is a numerical scale of disappearance, more than 30 plates referenced, none surviving in institutional hands, and every attempt to reconcile the lists ending in contradiction or ambiguity. Scale. The ledgers themselves become artifacts of loss. Each missing plate is a ghost in the archive, a reminder that the history of the Crystal Palace is not just a story of fire, but of records erased, misplaced, or quietly withheld. The hope for a material lead, a surviving plate or a rediscovered box remains, but it is hope built on gaps, on the spaces between numbers, and on the silent testimony of vanished catalogues. Ghost. In the spring of 1982, a glass negative surfaced at a Manhattan auction and drew immediate attention from collectors and historians. The plate was roughly 8 by 10 inches and was said to depict the New York Crystal Palace engulfed in flames, a photographic record that, if authentic, would have rewritten the history of the building's disappearance. The seller provided little documentation, only a vague account of an estate sale, and a handwritten note claiming the plate had been rescued from a studio closure in the 1920s. The bidding was fierce, but before any institution could secure the plate, a private collector stepped in. The new owner sent the negative to the Rochester Institute of Technology, RIT for forensic analysis. RIT imaging scientists began with a high-resolution scan, mapping every millimetre for signs of age, tampering, and chemical composition. The first anomaly appeared in the skyline. Under magnification, the upper third of the plate revealed the outlines of tall buildings that did not exist in New York until the 1870s. Below, the structure's dome and wings were visible, but their proportions seemed subtly off. The curve of the dome was too steep, the iron ribs too widely spaced. Architectural drawings from the 1850s, held at the New York Historical Society, showed a different geometry. The RIT team applied polarized light and digital layer separation, techniques designed to distinguish original exposure from later manipulation. Their findings were conclusive. The plate was a double exposure. One layer captured the Bryant Park skyline as it appeared nearly 2 decades after the fire. The other superimposed an earlier glass structure, possibly copied from a period print or from a later model. At the boundary where the 2 images overlapped, faint grid lines and geometric distortions appeared, evidence of retouching or contact printing. The dome's reflection bent in ways that no camera of the era could have produced, suggesting either a deliberate attempt to blend 2 eras or a flawed memory at work in the creation of a forgery. The RIT report, circulated quietly among museum curators and photographic historians, described the plate as inauthentic as a primary record, but of interest as a composite artifact. The language was careful, but the implication was clear. The image did not show the Crystal Palace fire as it happened. It showed a manufactured memory layered over a cityscape that had already changed. Some experts speculated that the forgery might have started with an actual fire photograph later, altered to fit a collector's fantasy or to mask the absence of a true original. Others dismissed this entirely, pointing to the unmatched dome geometry and the telltale signs of contact printing from a lithograph source. After the analysis, the plate's trail went cold. The anonymous buyer declined requests for further study and moved the negative into a private vault. No high-resolution scan or direct viewing has been permitted since. For those searching for a genuine photographic record of the Crystal Palace's end, the 1982 plate stands as both a warning and a temptation, a reminder of how easily the desire for evidence can conjure illusions, and how the true image of the vanished building remains just out of reach. In 1935, as workers dug beneath Bryant Park to lay foundations for the New York Public Library's expansion, their shovels struck something unexpected. Beneath layers of soil, they uncovered a scatter of black glass fragments, some fused, others sharp-edged, none matching the window panes or bottle glass common to the area. Several pieces bore a thin silver sheen, visible only when turned under the light. Field notes from the excavation, though now missing from official archives, described the shards as heavier than ordinary glass and noted a chemical odour clinging to their surfaces. Project supervisors set aside a small box of samples, tagging them for laboratory analysis in Albany. The shipment never arrived. Somewhere between Bryant Park and the state lab, the box disappeared, leaving only a single entry in the dig's shipment log and a question mark in the chain of custody. A brief notice ran in the New York Times, reporting the discovery of unusual glass relics beneath the lawn. Decades later, that clipping would vanish from the newspaper's archival index, its headline untraceable in microfilm or digital search. When archaeologists tried to revisit the site in the 1980s, they found that the original grid coordinates for the 1935 dig had been omitted from city records. The physical evidence, black glass with traces of photographic silver, had slipped through the cracks, just like the images it might once have carried. Each missing sample, each lost note, adds weight to the story. Photographic plates did exist, and their disappearance is as material as any fire or flood. In a laboratory at the National Institute of Standards and Technology, a fire scientist loads sodium-coated glass into a sealed chamber. The lab test aims to recreate the conditions described by witnesses at the Crystal Palace fire: no smoke, rapid cooling, and a blaze that seemed to erase every trace. The experiment triggers a bright, almost colorless flame. The bright sodium reacts with superheated oxygen, consuming the glass and leaving behind only a fine mineral dust. Yet even under controlled conditions, the test cannot replicate the total disappearance of photographic silver. The plates in the chamber survive, their images faint but stubbornly present. A materials conservator working with 19th century daguerreotypes tries another approach. The unproven conservator exposes silvered plates to intense heat, then to chemical baths that mimic early cleaning solutions. Some images fade or distort, but none vanish entirely. The hypothesis of spontaneous silver depolarization, where heat alone erases a photograph, remains unproven. No published experiment has managed to wipe a plate as completely as the Crystal Palace records suggest. Comparative records deepen the puzzle. The pattern appears elsewhere. The St. Louis Exhibition Hall, built of glass in 1854, was photographed extensively, but only sketches survive. Paris's Palais de l'Industrie lost its photographic archive in unexplained storage fires. The pattern stretches across continents, but nowhere is the loss as absolute as in New York. Private collectors sometimes whisper about surviving plates. The private record is fragmentary. In 1998, the Huntington Library quietly removed an unidentified glass plate from its catalogue, a plate from the 1850s. Those few who viewed it under polarized light describe shifting reflections, patterns that defy explanation, neither artifact nor accident. The scientific questions linger. The mystery remains: why do some images endure while others vanish without a trace? And what, if anything, could erase history so completely, yet leave behind just enough evidence to keep the mystery alive? Today, the world creates more images every minute than existed in the entire 1850s. Yet even now, digital archives fail, files vanish, and histories can still be rewritten or erased. The silence left by the Crystal Palace's missing images warns us. Evidence is not permanent unless we choose to protect it. What we forget, or allow to disappear, can shape the future as much as what survives.